We see this everywhere, right? There's the administrative burden of the day-to-day tasks that recruiters have. And now we can spend that time elsewhere at higher leverage, higher value time spent. And that is like building, cultivating relationships or setting strategy or refining our assessment process or whatever that might look like. It's a huge industry of folks that I do think a large part of their role is these administrative tasks that are progressively starting to be automated. And it's going to kind of raise the bar on them to be able to show value in these areas that really does matter. I do see like a bit of a consolidation coming across the talent landscape and folks that are really great at what they do starting to be able to truly shine. And I think a lot of that is also going to be underpinned by those with the networks, with the relationships that they can kind of continue to compound with this extra time that they now have.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 10X Recruiting, brought to you by MetaView. Sile, what's up, man? It's good to see you.
Really good to see you, man. You good?
I'm great. You good?
I'm good. Yeah. Enjoy. We're in the new office as of earlier this week, and just making myself at home.
Yeah, it's looking like corporate style, minus your hair.
Yeah. That was really good, actually. Maybe the camera doesn't do it justice. Next time in person, I'll show you.
Next time. All right, let's cook, baby. So today we had on Scott Bianco, who is the head of talent at Hebbia. They are one of the fastest growing companies right now. Incredible conversation. Sal, what were your takeaways?
So biggest takeaway from Scott was, I think it's sort of been talked about initially with the breakout of AI, but almost forgotten, but I think is really true and people need to retain is if you work in recruitment, you're actually really lucky because there's a huge part of recruitment which is about human to human interaction. And the exact way those human interactions are occurring might change over time, but I deeply believe those human to human interactions will play a big part in who wins at recruiting, and that will remain to be the case into the future. And so the fact that Scott at such an AI forward company folks should check out some of Hebbia founders, George Savolka's sort of writing about how he sees AI going, one of the most thoughtful companies on AI, like especially at the application layer, the fact that their recruiting leader has this very like fundamental and foundational approach, which is lean into the human aspects, like should not be overlooked. It feels like it's a bit of a cliche. It feels like it's a bit of a thing to make people feel warm and fuzzy. I promise you that is the stuff that is going to stand the test of time. And really, really cool to hear Scott jam on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Scott, given that he works at Hebbia, we actually talked a lot about human stuff, which is quite interesting. And one of my big takeaways on a riff that we went on is taste is the moat, and it's really hard to teach. So in fact, I actually think taste is like one of those unteachable skills that you can only get through reps. And specifically with talent, the lens you view it through has a lot to do with the history and what you've seen. And so tastemakers and talent have a ton of reps. And so in the world of AI, yes, AI is going to have a lot of reps, but actually this is like a place where the recruiter is going to play very, very deeply. We had a ton of conversations actually on human stuff. And so I think you guys are going to love this episode. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Scott. This is 10X Recruiting, a podcast from MetaView. Let's get after it. So Scott, you're at Hebbia. Like, what is Hebbia? When did you join? Like, give us the story.
So I've been at Hebbia now for, 2.5 years. What is Hebbia? I'd give you a different answer probably every 6 months since then. But I think the long and short of it is we are AI for financial services. We started more in the semantic search at scale, building our own alternative to RAG and kind of going after all of the industries because it was so powerful. Then we kind of had to dial in our go-to-market motion as you have like all of these hyper vertical solutions, kind of like getting a lot of traction and realizing that society hasn't really figured out how to like use something super generalizable. So we were obviously winning most in financial services. So we just kind of doubled down there. And it actually has some of the toughest challenges from like an architectural standpoint and privacy and kind of security standpoint that we like to choose the hard stuff, which makes all parts of the job hard, but also rewarding and fun. It's like a sandbox that not everyone is playing in, which is nice.
When did you join?
So I joined end of 2023 as first people in like talent, people, HR. You're kind of doing all the things. It's scary because like you have to field whatever might come up. If it's like employee relations, thank God nothing ever happened. It was kind of like a team of one to get off the ground, build all the talent processes and the infrastructure and the stack. And we're about 20 employees, like 6 engineers, Series A, and just in New York office. Fast forward to today, we're about 140, approaching 150 employees, deep into our B, kind of approaching C raise, and offices in San Francisco and London. And still lots to build.
So joining as an employee, like the first people, talent person is super challenging, especially in like today's world. You've survived for more than 2 years. What is the key to your survival?
It just takes like a lot of almost, grit that's slightly detached from reality, like the chip on your shoulder that like you will just muscle it. For some reason, like my mantra has always been like, I'd like to be around super like high talent dense, high bar environments. And sometimes that's terrifying because I have imposter syndrome. But like narrative that my dad baked into me, I don't know if it's helped, but it's like, listen, we're not always going to be the smartest in the room, but we will outwork everybody under the table. And that's what you're good at.
I feel super similarly, but like, how does that work with your personal life? Like, how does the impact of work affect what's going on, in your relationships outside of work?
Actually found my first like real long-term relationship when I was able to focus on something where I'm like invested in long-term, and I no longer have the distractions of maybe the extra work-life balance that I had previously, that it's like, hey, it's time to grow up and get serious. And like, you're now building for your future. You want this equity to appreciate and to mean something. It's in your control. And then it was like, well, I should probably apply like similar philosophy and, hygiene to my personal life, which is I've been in the same relationship as long as I've been in a relationship with Hebbia. So it's
Wow.
going well.
That's such an interesting take that no one talks about. It's usually like, like I don't hang out as much with my friends, or I don't see people as much anymore. But I love the focus take because it's true. Like when you start to focus on the things that matter, typically like it's like making an investment in something, right? Like the more you're investing in that thing, hopefully it compounds more.
And it just puts like a necessary filter on all of the noise in your life that probably didn't like deserve the space that it took up in your attention, right? Like I deleted Instagram. The less, fulfilling relationships and friendships in my life, like took a bit of a backseat, and I had to like really be thoughtful about like who is in my close circle and who is also like has similar goals, and we can encourage one another. And also when I ghost because I'm cramming on work, they get it. And when we meet up again, it's like, yeah, we're both grinding, but it's cool. And, I'm rooting for you.
Let's get into some recruiting stuff. So you and I share a little bit of a brain on many things. There's some things we disagree on, which people will hear. But I'm curious about like, how are you thinking about letting candidates or not letting candidates use AI in your interview process? Like, do you guys measure it? Do you care about cheating? What's your stand on this?
Obviously, where my mind first goes is like that's the world in which we live, right? And I think we've always biased for like a practical assessment, right? How is this person going to show up in the world? And that's been taken to the extent of doing multi-day work trials, for example. And in those formats, I think it's perfectly fine. It's you reach the constraint when you really try and whittle down a process to be extremely lean, and you're trying to optimize for signal, and you don't know what else to lean on. So I think it looks different depending on the role, right? Like if it's going to be in engineering and you want to right now, like, yeah, we do encourage folks not to use AI. I know that others are. It works for our process because we're looking more so for like how they think and how they approach problem solving and trade-offs, or how they debug. And then it's a little bit more conversational on things that they've built and how they've navigated, some of the complexities that came up. if it's going to be maybe in like product marketing and this, maybe it's a take home and it's a tool that enables them, sure. But then that's just going to be something that we want to be mindful of when we're kind of probing and digging. If this helped you build a better end product, great. But of course, we want to know exactly how you arrived at the assumptions that you made, the strategy you put in place. And we're going to be double clicking on that there's actually some real thought that was put into this, and you get it.
So basically what I'm hearing you say there is like, we went from a multi-day process back when we weren't as time constrained. Now we're scaling like crazy. And because we're scaling like crazy, we literally just can't have our best people interviewing all day long. And so we've swung this pendulum back to like, sounds like more of like a traditional interview.
Pretty much, man. I mean, you can't, especially when you're operating super lean, like you have to it's expensive, right? It's expensive to make a bad hire. It's also expensive to burden your team with countless interviews, right? So it's like, which is more detrimental to our ability to deliver on our roadmap and, the goals that we've set with the board. But ultimately, we've biased for enabling, I think this is particularly true for engineering, enabling those folks. So we're kind of like triaging it such that, those with maybe higher scope are tasked a little bit later in the process. And we've already filtered down that to be a higher likelihood to convert with like better signal previously gathered, warranting that time, rather than say like, oh yeah, we have our CTO take the first screen of every call for a junior engineer. Like, I don't think that's an effective way of kind of like, right, allocating different folks' time. But I do think we're able to get adequate signal in the current format because, to your point earlier, when I first joined, it was a full day on site and it was very practical. And it was, hey, builds like vector search, kind of like early concepts of applying RAG in production. When people were Claude coding or using Cursor their entire way through it, and there wasn't a lot of value in us like actually just reading the code, it became just a systems discussion where it was like, okay, well, do you know like actually how, what trade-offs were made in like the actual design and architecture here? And then even there, we weren't getting enough signal, and it became how would you scale Facebook or how would you scale, Twitter? And then you totally, you've diverted from where you started to like a serious degree that you need to rethink it.
What I'm thinking about now, which is kind of interesting, is like everyone's talking about, well, do you know how to use AI? And if I think like of the Venn diagram of people who know how to use AI and people who can do well on kind of like the traditional coding interview, like who's going to do well in the traditional coding interview and not know how to use AI? Like, is that a thing? Like, I think we've now like crossed the threshold into the zone to where like smart people are using AI every day. And so I'm assuming then like where your process moves into is like we have like some sort of AI assessment kind of separately, probably.
There's a gap, right? Like what about when you're talking about your senior staff, principal, engineer, architect who's been extremely AI enabled, and they're going to probably do worse on that leak code than a fresh grad who has zero production experience, right? They've never actually shipped into prod, but they know all of the leak code, top 10 most likely questions to be interviewed on. And they'll shred it and they'll give you false signal, right? But that's earlier on. And then you kind of need to go into something that's a little bit more practical. So again, I don't think that I've solved this personally. It's like an internal debate that we have often. These AI tools have gotten really good at enabling back-end engineers to be able to ship reasonable front ends. And that's the more interesting thing, that it's like, I think we're probably a little bit more attached to making sure that we're doing our front end coding assessments without AI, because it kind of like shows a little bit of like the core knowledge that goes into the nuances with front end development versus just like something kind of hacky that works. But I think that's part of like the broader shift of everyone starting to migrate into more of like a products engineering type role. I think it's a little bit harder to do that in the reverse without actually having like the systems depth.
Are you guys seeing like some of these engineers that are like starting to do product and design work in addition to the core engineering work?
Yeah, our designers are ripping sick prototypes. Our engineers are, yeah, I've never seen the team be like so multi-skilled, and I've seen just like the kind of like product velocity kind of proportionately accelerate with the development of these tools. It's been really, really cool to see. And I'll even see it from the go-to-market side with folks that are just super curious that want to get more involved. And all of a sudden you can kind of spin them into a PM because like what, like they maybe understand the customer like better than anyone. And now that technical blocker is a little bit thinner.
Is it changing your org chart?
It's offering more mobility. I wouldn't say that it's reshaping it per se, but I'd say that there's a thinner layer between some of the compartmentalization of orgs.
Interesting. It makes people more fungible. Like they can do different things just by like, because you're taking your core knowledge of one thing and using the tools to supercharge you in an area that isn't your strongest area. But because you're bringing something with you, that might get you to a different place or a different outcome than somebody who's coming from the other spot.
Exactly.
So you have a take, which I strongly disagree with, by the way, which is that you think highly custom tailored outreach is a waste of time. Like, what is wrong with you?
It depends on who your audience is. I'd say that the exception to this rule is recruiting recruiters. And I say that because I think that recruiting recruiters, you do respect the craft. I think, frankly, oftentimes we have numbers of first or second degree connections that we can build better credibility upon that initial outreach and make it meaningfully more custom. And in that scenario, you are going to see better ROI on your response rates. I think if you pivot to folks, on the more technical side that are getting blasted with however many inbounds that look exactly the same, Series A, Sequoia back, 20 million raised, like how do they sift through that noise? And I think they're looking for a few key elements. And what they're deciding is like, do I have is what I'm receiving warrant the time out of my day to actually explore further? And they're going to decompose that by kind of like, running it through a few different assessments. One, do I know this person, right? Is there credibility? Is this like totally cold, or is this actually someone that I know and trust? If you don't have that filter checked, which I think, especially with mass outreach, which is what most folks are doing right now, they're not going to do that. Then it's going to be, okay, kind of like the fundamental whys, why this company, why now, why me, why this role? And that's getting into, I think what people miss on in outreach is it's like differentiated whys. Now, to the extent that might be personalized to them, I think that's relevant. But I think you can also solve for that in the actual pool in which you're sourcing, that you can mass scale specific outreach towards, that funnel that you're after, because they all come from, you're great for this because you come from distributed systems. This is a distributed systems kind of sourcing pipeline that I'm pulling. That's fair. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be speaking to their hobbies or speaking to the thing they posted on Twitter, because what that really is it's an attempt at like a proxy for assuming that you have that warm relationship, which, let's be honest, you didn't, you don't. And I think that the only likely case where they will start to see it deviate from the credibility side is this an opportunistic conversation for me to take? Meaning, where is this person reaching out from? Who do they represent? What firm are they from? Do they seem very well connected? And even if I don't care about this job, should I just take this call? I think the objectivity of how related the role is to their goals and the kind of credibility of that person doing the outreach trumps all.
So we're not that misaligned then. I actually completely agree with what you just said. The way I frame it to people with outreach is the goal is to get the person to jump on the phone. That is the only goal. We're not trying to hire them. We're not trying to interview them. We're literally just trying to get them on the phone. Like that is problem one to be solved. And so I totally agree with you, which is like when in their mind, they're thinking, who is this person and do I want them in my network going forward? I think that's actually like thing one. Thing two is like, is this company interesting? And do I want to be part of that company's network in the future? And then I think thing three, and there's like a big chasm between 2 and 3, is like, is this role interesting? And would I potentially be thinking about doing that now or at some point in the future? I actually think 1 and 2 is where like the long game of recruiting is played. And that's how I think about it when I'm doing my own outreach is I'm positioning around number 1 and number 2, which is like, we should be homies and you should know this company and this founder.
Yeah, I think maybe there's like varying definitions of personalization that maybe I was operating under a different assumption that I just don't
nobody gives
think
a shit about your hobbies. Like when people say, like, I don't care. Like, great, you read my LinkedIn.
Yeah, you saw that I used to work here and I work here, and you're proud of my career growth. Thanks. You know,
That's like day one shit of like it actually doesn't like the personalization is erroneous. It doesn't matter because it's so surface level. It doesn't get to the actual human emotion that we're trying to evoke, which is I should know you or this company.
Yeah. So we actually are more aligned than we thought, I guess.
Okay. All right. I'll let you slide on that one. You get another one, which I actually do agree with, which is AI is killing bad recruiters and making the great ones lethal. Talk me through that.
We see this everywhere, right? That it's just like there's the administrative burden of the day-to-day tasks that recruiters have. And now we can spend that time elsewhere at higher leverage, higher value time spent. And that is like building, cultivating relationships or setting strategy or refining our assessment process or, you know, whatever that might look like. It's a huge industry of folks that I do think are a large part of their value or a large part of their role is these administrative tasks that are, you know, progressively starting to be automated. And it's going to kind of raise the bar on them to be able to show value in these areas that like it really does matter. So I do, not to be a doomer, but I do see like a bit of a consolidation coming across the talent landscape and folks that are really great at what they do starting to be able to truly shine. And I think a lot of that is also going to be underpinned by those with the networks, with the relationships that they can kind of continue to compound with this extra time that they now have.
What do you think about the durability of recruiting?
So my friend Patrick at Thrive, he kind of flipped my head on this because I have doomer tendencies and I need to be talked off a ledge every now and then. So he's like, no, dude. He's like, have you heard about the doorman fallacy? And I was like, what's the doorman fallacy? He was like, all right, well, think about when, you know, we developed electricity, we developed, you know, power operated doors at you know, luxury buildings. Doormen were freaking out. You know, they thought that their job was gone. The door opens itself. And that couldn't be more untrue. They're still doormen today. It is a luxury service that I think the best companies that truly care about talent will appreciate. And I think if anything, invest more into it just because of the human element that comes with this profession. If that can translate to a doorman in their profession, nothing against doormen at all. But I'm saying I do think that it can equally translate here when you think about this being a major life decision where people are sharing things about their families and having to make a bet and the things that they don't feel comfortable disclosing to a hiring manager or a founder. Like you're their advocate and you're a little bit of their therapist throughout the way.
Confidant.
You're their confidant. That's incredibly human. And I guess that's one pushback that I'd have.
I like the take on it being akin to a luxury service. Like, I think there will be like a little bit of a barbell approach. I think with pipeline roles, especially with companies that have big brands, there's going to be a lot more automation there. And I think that automation is actually better for the candidate than a recruiter because automation can go through millions of resumes. It could stack rank better. You could see where it has bias through the reasoning trail, which you can't do with the human because it's in my head. You can't see shit in my head. I think that's going to be great actually for that and having a more meritocratic decision making thing.
Yeah.
On the other end of the spectrum, like when you get more senior and you're going through these decisions, I think you're just going to want a human. I think you're going to want a human experience. And so I totally agree with you. I feel like that's exactly where the world is going, is that there's just going to be, it's going to be more luxury, which means if it's going to be more luxury, it's going to be more precise about where we use it.
I don't think that there's this world where it can be entirely like ran by agents. I think that I don't see them getting to a place where they can truly pick up on EQ and culture fit and someone's ability to be set up for success, regardless of maybe how well they did on a set of assessments. Let's face it, our job is to not do any vibes-based hiring, but like there is an element of culture and vibes that when you're building a very early team comes into the conversation.
I think vibes is potentially, like, outside of the core skill set, the most important thing. This notion that like I shouldn't think about anything other than can you do the skills required for the job is insane, given how much time I'm going to be spending with you. If I don't like you, what are we doing here? Life is too short. Like, why would I want to work with you?
And I think that is the truly durable kind of nature of this role, is having the EQ and like the ability to perceive, to understand the culture and the vibes of the company in which you're building, and to be able to glean some kind of signal on this person's, like how they operate and how they're likely to show up. Is this a culture fit? Is this a culture add? And I think recruiters will be more trusted with that type of judgment.
So I agree, but I feel like that's one of those skills that is an unteachable. And the only way you can get better at it is by steeping with the company. So like spending a shit ton of time with the company, inside the company, and a ton of reps, like just rep after rep after, and still you may never get there, right? It's like I used this example a couple of weeks ago. It's like a sommelier. There's like 10 really good ones in the world. And I don't drink wine for shit, but like I hear about it and I'm interested in it because I do think that the analogy plays with us, which is like, some people are just like born to do that thing.
You've developed tastes.
Okay, exactly. So this is exactly where I'm getting with it. It's like you're hiring recruiters right now. How do you think about assessing for taste? And then how do you think about trying to like coach it into somebody?
It's so funny. Interviewed someone recently. They were talking about like on that first call and how they protect the pipeline and knowing when to advance folks and when not. Kind of probed into like, hey, like what's your methodology? Like what's your criteria set? How do you think about who you do move forward, who you do advocate for, or when you have that feeling like this person's getting the offer? I'm calling it right now, which is my favorite feling in the world.
That's my favorit thing to do. Dude, I love doing that.
It's the Babe Ruth. It is, there's no better feeling. But I asked him that. I was like, how do you know? Like, tell me your thought process. How do you decompose these inputs into like something that's actually somewhat scientific? And he's like, dude, it's just tastes. He's like, I've just been doing this forever and I just know. And I'd say that there probably could have been more introspection on like how we could really communicate those things. But to what we're talking about, it actually did ring true. And I kind of felt it in the way that he said it. So, if I were to think about how do I like more deeply assess, I'd probably run a few different scenarios and say, well, here's candidate A. These are the signals they give you. How do you respond in such a situation? Are they someone that you're super bullish about or not? What red flags do you pick up from that? But I really do think that it can only come with, like you said, reps and experience. That's why I have a big bias for kind of like this, Adam Ward's, Growth by Design, like the power I see I think this is like the era of the power IC. And I think that's one of those inherent skills that they often bring.
See, I like asking people about the best hire they ever made and why it was the best hire and just kind of like learning from that. And then the other one that I'm thinking about for myself is like how have I acquired my own taste and my own, my wife and I use the term feel a lot. Because a lot of the stuff is like happening in this like other dimension and realm. Like we're still talking to each other, but like, like cats can see a different color than humans can, which is weird. And I feel like that's when you start to operate at that level. Where does it come from? For me, I was mentored by a fucking guru. And like he would see shit that I didn't see. And I would just like, I was so curious about like how he did his thing. I would just ask a million questions like after I was shadowing him on a call. And I do worry about this next generation of recruiter given remote. Like if I was growing up in a remote world, there's no way I would have had those opportunities. I worry about like there's no time anymore, right? Like he had more slack in his calendar to like want to grow me. And I was obviously like the kid who was like hanging on his coattails all the time too. But that guy is named John Kwok, and John is a savant at this thing. And that was my shortcut. It still took me a long time to develop my own taste and my own feel. But I think a shortcut is like, who is your mentor and who did you learn from in this game? Because I don't think I would have gotten there if I just learned on my own.
Was there like a particular skill that you can somehow express, like
Yeah.
a learning?
Yes. Like the power in the fault, like everyone has a standard set of questions, but it's when do you decide to go off script to drill deeper? So like what he would do is he would hear something that just didn't like sound right or that he needed more clarification on. And he would never let a moment with those things like go, like just leaving it hanging of like, oh, that was weird. They said that thing. In the moment, he was so intellectually nimble
Yeah.
that he could just drill further and get to the kernel of the thing that mattered.
It's a little bit of improv in that, right? It's immediately acknowledging some things off and knowing how to design a follow-up question that best exposes your suspicions
Yeah.
or invalidates them. I like that a lot. And I think it's oftentimes you'll come out of a screen, you'll be like, damn, I wish I asked them this question. That was kind of weird. I guess we're going to have to make a note to follow up on that in the later interviews to dig for that.
If it's later, you might have missed the moment. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? Like, you might have missed the timing and the moment. But even as I'm saying it right now, I'm trying to give people agency on like how do you get better at follow-up questions. The only thing that's coming to me right now is don't be afraid to ask stupid questions. Like, what do you mean? Can you explain more? Like, I don't know what that is. Honestly, though, but it's like sometimes it comes up with candidates. I mean, yeah, I'm doing exec stuff right now, and I'm for sure the dumbest person in every conversation. But like, the more you pull the thread on these things, the more you find out it can really matter. It can really matter where someone's at in their life and what they're optimizing for, how they're evaluating one opportunity versus another. So then we can shift our recruiting process to make it more in tune for them, or it just informs us like, hey, this is not our person. That's really like where the game is going with machines coming everywhere, AI all over the place. Like it's all we're talking about is like automation and more and more and more. I actually think like where the game is going is right here. Like this is the new field to where if you can do this really well, you will create promoters of your business, of your service, of the thing that you deliver to the company that they can't live without.
And the competency framework potentially for uncovering this. It sounds like it's almost requires a deep sense of like unfiltered curiosity.
Yes.
That where to direct the line of question. You can ask a question, I don't get it, but like it's a series of questions to get it to understand. Oh, what so is it that, right? Like, so would you say that curiosity is like your biggest asset or like your compass when you're going down that?
Yeah, like the analogy for me is like, I played a bunch of video games growing up. And typically when you enter a video game, you're playing on a map, but you can only see part of the map. And so my goal is to like fill in the rest of the map. Like, so I can have a more complete picture of what I'm dealing with. And specifically in this case, with this human. Like, who are you? What do you care about? Like, what are the things that you're optimizing for? Everyone asked like kind of the basic questions, but then it's the follow up of like, what'd you do this weekend? And now my map is now being filled in on the thing, like on who you are as a human and as a person. And again, like when I think about where do recruiters add leverage in the future, it's like, I know more about this person. Like we're becoming tight.
Right.
And just because we're becoming tight doesn't mean we're going to hire you. Like, doesn't mean that at all. It just means I'm trying to give the asymmetry of my hiring team so they have the same map that I'm operating off of.
But you're also you're creating a differentiation in that candidate experience and their perception of the opportunity in the company. Because one, they're going to typically stick to like, this is what I say, this is how I talk about my job, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I'm optimizing for. And most, I'd say like the most recruiters are just going to go through and collect the notes and kind of keep it moving. When you kind of break their rehearsed, sometimes get a little weirded out. And it's like, wait, why are you asking me this? But you got to like show that it's a safe place and like come from a sincere place of curiosity. And I've noticed when you do break that line, you've both walked away with a deeper connection. Now, that's a different, like, what are we chasing in scaling startups? Differentiation. That relationship differentiation is actually quite meaningful. And you're the most likely person for them to go in your corner when it's like, all right, listen, Nolan, like I've got this offer from here and here and here. I love you guys, but like they're not talking like that to every other recruiter. And that's a major advantage.
There's so many pieces here, Scott. So like piece one is I am personally playing the infinite game. Just because I met you as part of this search does not mean I need to shovel you in at all costs to close this role and move on. Because if I do that, and it's wrong, it's bad for your life. Number one, like it's truly immoral. Number two, it's bad for the company. And they hired me to solve this problem, whether external or internal. It's the same shit. Like it's the same thing. And so it's bad for everybody involved. Now, the more you get to know somebody, the more, people talk about the anti-sell of like, here's all of our warts. I actually think the best anti-sell is when you could say to somebody, I actually don't think this is right for you.
Right.
And earnestly mean it, because that is one of the rarest skills in recruiting, because everyone wants to be just done with the fucking role. But if you play the infinite game and it's not great for that human's life and you've like potentially like really hurt their life, you've slowed down the company, you've created all of these second order problems, like you're a disaster. Like, yeah, you check that box, but now the box is going to be reopened. And I just don't think most recruiters think that way. And there's a lot of reasons why, with pressure and, a ton of recs, and like they don't have time to scale themselves. But I think that is mecca for the profession, is like truly being able to tell someone, this isn't for you. Like, we'll be homies for forever. I'm going to think about you. Like, you're going to be in my Rolodex. You can hit me up whenever you have questions on other things. Like, we should stay close and have an earnest relationship, which takes 5 seconds through a text. But like, I don't need to shovel everybody into a role.
The older you get, I think the more like this matters when you're just thinking about the actual impact of the work that you're doing, and like I don't know, now we're getting a little existential with it, but your legacy, right? Like the craft, the actual futures that you've impacted, and wanting to know that you did it with integrity. It's huge.
Well, think about, you're hiring on your team right now. How many recruiters are you hiring?
I'd say 1 in tech, 1 in go-to-market. Frankly, we have tons of growth, and
you're going to be hiring recruiters as long as
hiring recruiters, hiring engineers, hiring go-to-market, sales, all the things.
But on that topic, right? It's like, if I'm a recruiter and I'm thinking about who do I want to go learn from, like, I actually think that's one of your differentiators, is you give a shit.
I think there's I've met, I don't know, there's a pretty great pocket of like my network of heads of talent within like the New York startup scene that frankly are all pretty fantastic. And I can't say that.
How'd you find those people?
It was kind of it's kind of like when I moved to Denver. When I moved to Denver, everyone was just there because they moved from somewhere else. and they had no friends. And they're like, I'm figuring this out on my own and I have no community and it's a little scary. And I literally went up to a group of like 30 people. I was like, guys, I just moved here yesterday. I have no friends. Like, can you help me? And they were like, yo, we all just moved here. Yes, please come. And they became some of my closest friends. I did one of their weddings recently. It was awesome. But I think
Wow.
similar thing applies to any type of head of talent leadership, founding recruiter role. You're on an island of your own and it's a little scary, and you don't have you're going in with all of the knowledge that you've gained through your experience, and you're like, am I doing this thing right? The community here is pretty awesome because we can just kind of like empathize with one another in being at that stage in their careers. And we've all banged our heads against the same walls, and therefore we kind of pay it forward as new folks kind of come into the circle.
I just heard Bill Gurley talk about this. And I think the way that it's exactly what you described with a slightly different frame, which is when you think about like who you're going to learn from, you should make friends with people who are in the same job as you at different companies.
Yeah.
Because typically you're facing similar problem sets.
Always.
There isn't this like weird, oh, Scott's 10 years older than me. Like every time I interact with him, I'm the only one in the relationship benefiting. Right. So you kind of have this like this very organic idea exchange thing. And then you guys end up you guys end up growing together such that then it's like now we have like this whole apparatus of people we can reach out to because they're making friends and you're making friends and now we're all friends. That's what's happened in my career. I never thought about it that way. But like every time I tried to reach out to somebody who was like 10 years more senior than me, it felt yucky because I didn't have anything to offer to that person.
What defies all those things is just a nice old-fashioned trauma bond. You know? It's like,
Totally, bro.
It's like, yo, I know you're working 12, 14, maybe all hours, maybe all nighters. I know you're not alone. I've been there. Let's lean on me. And
Call me crying.
Call me. Yeah.
I love it. All right, Scott. So a bunch of recruiters listen to the show. How can they get in touch about your open roles?
Hit us up. Shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. Of course, apply on the careers page, but DMs are absolutely open, both for myself and who I report to, Tom Navin, our head of people. He's fielding it as well. And yeah, we're building an awesome team, open both in New York as well as San Francisco.
Thanks for the time, brother.
I appreciate you, man.